Welcome back to another Pokemon of the Week or Pokemon Draft League analysis video where we cover popular Pokemon used in the Draft League format. So, this video we'll be covering Nidoqueen, the ground poison type Pokemon. So, let's get started. Regarding Nidoqueen, it is, as I mentioned, ground poison. As with terms of like typing, like it has weaknesses to water, ground, psychic, ice. So some of the more common like offensive typings you would encounter in a draft league at the moment. So, however, it has good resistances to fighting, fairy, rock, poison, and bug. Not to mention, it is a grounded poison type Pokemon, so you are able to basically remove any form of toxic spikes on the field. So that is amazing. Once Nidoqueen enters on the field, so that's really amazing. In terms of base stat totals, Nidoqueen did get a slight buff in Gen 6 with a slight increase into its attack. However, overall, its base stats aren't really in a way impressive, nor is it good bad in a sense. Like, well, though now if you think about it, it's like kind of like below average, or but with everything around or 75 plus, like it's still okay. Like, especially for the fact that like you might think, oh, these offensive stats are not that great. It's defensively, it's really good, like with 90 HP, 87 defense, and 85 special defense. So yeah, so we'll get into the abilities in a bit. So, Poison Point, you won't see this ability rarely on Nidoqueen, except on some defensive sets or any Nidoqueen from like previous generations, which may have an exclusive move. So, Rivalry is very inconsistent because of how in Showdown or any league battle, unless you know what Pokemon's gender will be, uh, like it will increase the power of Nidoqueen's moves by 25% against the same sex, but it will reduce the power against like an opposite like gender. So in this case, like let's say a male. So yeah, and it just cancels out, and genderless Pokemon will cancel out any form of rivalry boost. So yeah. However, its other ability, which is Sheer Force, and it's a hidden ability, is perhaps one of the best abilities in the game, since it increases the damage output of moves of selective, like Pokemon with, or of selective Pokemon moves with additional effects. And that's just rather amazing if you think about it, since having that extra boost at the cost of, let's say, oh, maybe a 10% chance, might be great, especially how large Nidoqueen's coverage options will be, as we'll talk about in this video. So, Life Orb is a great item because it doesn't get any recoil with the ability Sheer Force. So, I don't know why, but that's how Game Freak programmed it. So yeah. So why use Nidoqueen? It's great defensive value with its typing, wide coverage options, has support options, and has a great ability in Sheer Force. Like, yes, it has above average stats, but they actually help Nidoqueen out more so, since it's very tanky in a sense. It's gonna be very difficult to take down, even if you run a super effective move. So, and it's the fact that its move pool is boosted by like Sheer Force. It just makes like Nidoqueen exceptionally versatile. It's like one of the most like versatile Pokemon, even for like for a draft league. So yeah. And the thing about Nidoqueen is that it can fulfill a myriad of roles, whether it be an offensive wall breaker, passive supporter, stall breaker, or even a defensive wall or check. So yeah. Like the thing is with Sheer Force, it's like in tandem with like Nidoqueen's coverage, just makes almost everything nearly like like it could pretty much hit anything in the format for super effective. Like depending on what moves you want. So unless like the opponent properly scouts out your Nidoqueen set and they just have a good counter to it. So yeah. And of course, it has strong like stab options like Earth Power, Sludge Wall, Slush Wave, and as well as other options like Fire, Electric, Ice, Ghost, Fighting, and Dark coverage. That could all get boosted by like Sheer Force. So that's amazing if you think about it. And during like drafting, it's often seen as a very late run through. But then again, you're more likely gonna see this thing drafted around round maybe 3 to round 6 or 7. It's like one of those Pokemon where it's sort of like a glue, but it's a really good glue Pokemon in the sense that whatever role that Nidoqueen you want Nidoqueen to fulfill, whether it be a bulky ground or like a hazard setter or an offensive wall breaker, like it will fulfill its role very well. So yeah. So in terms of notable moves, as I said, it has options of Earth Power, Sludge Wave, which are great stab options that are all boosted by Sheer Force. They also have like percentage chances, but to be honest, you're rarely gonna get those. So you'd rather get the trade-off for more power for like in your attacks than like those chance effects. So then you have Stealth Rocks, which of course any rock, ground, or steel types usually have or learn. And you have Ice Beam, which in tandem with Earth Power and the boost with Sheer Force, it makes it one of nearly unswitchable, being very like have like great perfect coverage in a sense, and few Pokemon can switch into this thing. You also have access to Toxic Spikes, which is a great move in Draft League because if your opponent does not have a poison type, you can use Toxic Spikes just to wear down your opponent every turn, and that alone could just win you games. Just wearing down the opponent and just phasing them out, or just using Nidoqueen and its partners. So yeah, you also have access to Thunderbolt, Thunder as well. They all have Fire Blast, Flamethrower, just to like, they're all boosted by Sheer Force. So yeah, you also have access to some great utility options in Taunt, which prevents any status or any status moves like Setup or like a status inflictment like Spore. You have Roar, which is a phasing move, and Super Fang, which doesn't receive a boost from Sheer Force, but it does 50%, so it's really nice coverage option if you want to be like a more like stall breaker set. So the other viable options are substitute just to take let's say 25% of your own HP in favor of getting a sub up, or a decoy, in which it pretty much can help in certain situations. Like it could ease some predictions in a sense. You have Superpower to hit normal type Pokemon, and plus Dark types. Dragon Tail, another way to phase. Earthquake is another is for physical coverage, though it doesn't get boosted by Sheer Force, but Nidoqueen has that option in case if there are certain targets that Earthquake can just hit harder than Air Power. There's also Rock Slide, which gets boosted by Sheer Force. Mainly all the elemental punches, Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch. There's all of them. It also has access to Sucker Punch as a priority option. Crunch, which is rather amazing if you think about it. So yeah, Shadow Ball, and for Ghost coverage, and Focus Blast for fighting coverage. So yeah. So in terms of notable items, for Z Crystals, Nidoqueen has a good option Z moves to utilize from Poisium, Oxinium, Groundium, Icium, Electrium, and Fire Z. And with all the moves listed down below, both physical and special. So that's a great user of like Z moves, given its coverage options. Offensively, for its any offensive sets, it has great options in terms of using Life Orb, Choice Specs, and Choice Scarf. So most of those choice items really help it out. So recovery options, Leftovers, Black Sludge, and 50% berries are really helpful, restoring back a little HP every turn, or just getting a large sum if you're very low at HP. So yeah. Then you have 50% berries like Shucka, Iapapa, Pachot, and Yachi Berry that are really nice, since Nidoqueen can take one of those effective hits and then like heal back with retaliatory damage back. So that's in case you want to live something, let's say like a Landorus T Earthquake. So yeah. and other items like Assault Vest, Focus Sash, Shit Shell, Choice Band, or any other item. Just can make very good use for Nidoqueen's stats and bulk. So now in terms of that's the first one we were talking about is the Life Orb set. Now Life Orb Nidoqueen is exceptionally threatening because of the fact that it has the Sheer Force boost and the Life Orb boost that doesn't apply any recoil damage, which is amazing. So yeah, that fact alone is just rather good, since you're usually OHKOing or 2-hit killing most things. Normally with one of these Life Orb sets, you want to have at least one hazard option, let's say rocks or T-Spikes. And of course, like the movesets listed can be interchangeable between Earth Power, Ground Coverage, Sludge Wave, Poison Coverage, Thunderbolt, Electric Coverage, Ice Beam, Ice Coverage, and Flamethrower Fire Coverage. So yeah, this is a more offensive set, so you can run max speed just to insert the outspeed stuff, or you can just run modest if you feel the need to like run a more offensive set. So yeah, Life Orb can also be built on more defensive build mode. If you want to run modest nature or bold, that's up to you. So yeah, and you want to have either the option of rocks or Toxic Spike, that's up to you as well. So Earth Power and Ice Beam are really good coverage options to pair together normally, since they have perfect coverage. Sometimes you want to run like Roar, Taunt, or Toxic, one of the others, as like a coverage in terms of like, or a utility option for something you need. So yeah, for like defensive sets, this is sort of like gearing into the second one. That's like usually you want to have like, let's say a healing item, let's say leftovers, but in this case I'm going to be using 50% berry, since sometimes you may want to have immediate recovery after getting Nidoqueen like very weakened from battle. So yeah, so you could also have leftovers or Back Surge for just gradual recovery. And in this set's usually built just stand physical hits as with its respective like health item as well, and it's really customizable. So you could have the option of running double hazards or having a taunt roar just to phase. On the course, the move slot coverage is differs or depends on what you want. So yeah, the Stallbreaker set pretty much takes advantage of Super Fang and Taunt together. So you could also run like hazards, like since Super Fang really puts pressure onto the opponents, they just lose 50% of their HP, and then you could just actually knock them out with, like, let's say a coverage option, say Ice Beam, Earthquake, Earth Power, Flamethrower, Sludge Wave, etc., etc. You can run like last coverage. It could be like between Taunt, Roar, Toxic for utility, since Toxic actually can help you hit a levitating Pokemon, since Toxic Spike doesn't hit like levitators or flying types. So yeah, and you can also run Toxic Spike or Rocks if you need to weigh down something. So yeah, the third sets are here are Choice Lock sets like the Choice Scarf and the AV. So Choice Scarf is a very surprise set, since but this pretty much requires a lot of prediction or just or positioning to use very well. So Choice Scarf Nidoqueen can be very threatening, like to opponents that they don't see this coming at all. So like Earth Power, Sludge Wave, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower are really good coverage options. Like that's pretty much all you need in a sense. Maybe you want to tailor like, let's say, Rocks or Toxic Spikes in, just to make the opponent think that you're just a regular wall, and then you just come back and just outspeed it the next turn. So like with the speed, you outpace base 135 Mons like Limega Lopunny and Mega Manectric. So you outpace those Mons, and then you with Modest you outpace Mons like Tornadus. That's for level 100. So by the way, AV you want to have like only put like a little bit of Spadef in there, but you could put more Spadef to take like special hits better. So you have the choice between Earth Power, Sludge Wave, Ice Beam, Earth Flamethrower, Thunderbolt for coverage. And lastly, Super Fang's really nice just to like wear down the opponent, or just get like enough chips so that one of your other coverage options can knock out your opponent. So yeah. The fourth sets are pretty much physical or mixed variants. Now physical support is kind of interesting because Nidoqueen does have a good sizable physical coverage options like Earthquake, Ice Punch, Poison Jab. Normally you wouldn't even consider these options, but considering like some Pokemon like let's say you want to hit something like a Tyranitar harder, then what you can hit it like harder with Earthquake than Earth Power. Some situations, or like let's say like you want to hit something, let's say that's say like Salamandrous with like Ice Punch. And again, those are not the best examples, but like still, or Dragonite with Ice Punch. Then you have like Super Fang, Poison Jab. Poison Jab is a good example though, because like most poison type Pokemon have enough Spadef to live like a Sludge Wave. So, but they don't have enough to take like let's say 2 Poison Jabs as well. So yeah, you could also try Poison Point instead of Sheer Force in case like you want to have Nidoqueen like be able to like spread toxic or poison damage via like making contact via switching into like Pokemon like let's say like Terrakion or Infernape that just take a poison hit and they just take poison or from it, so from contact. So like likewise like this set's pretty much mimics like the other sets we've talked about. So like defensive sets, you have ground ice coverage for good coverage, and Super Fang just to wear down the opposing side. Poison Jab helps pick out berries, and Toxic Spike's really nice. So second set's pretty self-explanatory. There's a lot of slashes there, so I do apologize. Toxic Spike's is really nice just to wear down the opponent's side. Whereas Rocks can also help you out to just ensure that no one has Focus Ashes or Sturdy, so yeah. Then you pretty much, you have the choice between any other coverage options if you want, that's physical or special. Namely, you want to have Ice Beam over Ice Punch, since Ice Beam does way more than Ice Punch. But there are some situations that Ice Punch does more, so Poison Jab does way more than Life Orb, so in some situations. So you can even get some Okos with like against stuff like Sylveon, Florges, Aromatisse, so yeah. And Earthquake, Earth Powers, depends on what you want. So Earthquake, you will suffer Life Orb damage, so yeah. Same with Super Power, so yeah. The last sets are kind of like gimmicky in a way, but they can be viable. The first one's a kind of like Sash lead, which you have rocks. You just lead with Nidoqueen and just ensure that you have rocks up. You have Stealth Rocks, Toxic Spikes. You have Ice Beam, Earthquake, and then Counter, which is kind of funny because if your opponent has a physical mon, you could just use Counter just to Oko them back. So yeah. The second one's kind of a, I don't want to say a meme, but it's kind of funny since Nidoqueen does have access to Curse, but it's from Generation 2 Virtual Council, so Earthquake, Ice Punch make a good attacking coverage, so you have rest just to rest off the damage, and then maybe you can run like let's say a Lum Berry or like a 50% berry, so that's something you want to consider. So yeah. So how to use Nidoqueen? Generally speaking, Nidoqueen's like strength comes from like its versatility, in the sense that like players have to figure out what role Nidoqueen can be playing for that matchup, both they're playing with it or and against it. So let's say if you have like say an offensive Nidoqueen set, that set can still be played around as a defensive set, or they could be like played around with like having a certain coverage option. So you could actually bluff moves that you don't even have on Nidoqueen, and you can still do its job. Like you could just, the fact that you have like both rocks and Toxic Spikes really helps Nidoqueen, because its large coverage options as well, since like you could just force a switch and then you get one of those hazards up. So yeah. And speaking of that, you could just try to make use of its offensive pressure, or just to force switches, and you have to just take advantage of just setting up rocks, your hazards, or T-Spikes. So yeah. Like for defensive sets, you can play a little bit riskier, but just be sure to have like some ways to, don't use it as like a definitive counter to certain Pokemon. Just keep it healthy at all times. So, so keep in mind that defensive Nidoqueens are somewhat like easier to counter once you figure out the moveset. So yeah, the offensive Nidoqueens have to be like wary of switching in way too many times, unless like they have to pressure something. immediately, or you want to predict the switch in or like say like a full switch. So yeah. Um, and let's say like try to get Nidoqueen into the good situations where it could just have grid matchups, and then from there you could just make predictions or like just attack or set up hazards in general. And in situations where it can't be 2 killed, let's say like electric, fighting, fairy, or steel types, so then just go there from there. So yeah. Then finally you want to have Nidoqueen stay healthy as long as possible. So that's all. Alright, so in terms of partners, you want to have water type Pokemon in general, since Nidoqueen typically struggles against ground, like ice Pokemon, and water types are really good switch-ins against those Pokemon in general. So yeah, they have a good amount of bulk. They are very, very defensive and have like good cleric. Some of them do have some cleric support options or hazard options in general, so we can really appreciate Nidoqueen since it pressures both, let's say, grass and electric type Pokemon. So, and speaking of electric types, Nidoqueen just absolutely beats them in general. So yeah, Starmie is a good one since Nidoqueen can set up hazards, and Starmie can just remove any opposing hazards while you still have your own. Milotic is really nice since you have a Pokemon that has very high speed just takes hits in general. So yeah, Vaporeon is a really nice one since you have wish support as well. So, and Araquanid, it just sets up sticky webs, so that's really nice as well. Dark types are really appreciative since Nidoqueen doesn't really have to get switching against Psychic type Pokemon, and Dark types can be really nice. So Tyranitar forms really good synergy with Nidoqueen in general. Hydreigon is a really strong option with Nidoqueen, but Levitate, immune to ground, it takes Psychic hits, so they do share ice weaknesses. So Weavile is really nice, it picks off Psychic type Pokemon with Pursuit, or Knockoff, as even Sword Stance if it wants to set up. Umbreon sets up with Wishes, so it passes Nidoqueen. And lastly, Persian has Parting Shot, which could be very nice to switch in, or could switch into any Pokemon for Nidoqueen, so yeah. Then you have the Clerics, which are fairy types. Mostly any fairy type or cleric Pokemon that has Wish, or hasn't good enough HP to use Wish. So most of these Pokemon, except for Azumarill, can have access to Wish and can heal up Nidoqueen since Nidoqueen lacks recovery. And these Pokemon really help deal with Dragon type Pokemon, which Nidoqueen may struggle at times if it doesn't have Ice Beam. As well as kind of circumvents fighting, like it having to switch into fighting moves. These Pokemon can just heal themselves off, and this even Nidoqueen. So yeah, this is mostly for having like a Pokemon that takes like dragon hits. They take a dragon hit and also have recovery. So then you have grass types. Since water type Pokemon actually beat down Nidoqueen really badly. So having mods like Bulu, which heals up Nidoqueen, and also reduces earthquake damage. Ferrothorn for more hazards, Tangrowth for pivot option, Chestnut for hazards, and Delmite just to beat Psychic types. Helps. Fire types really appreciate Nidoqueen's ability to hazard stack with rocks and sea spikes, like Mega Gallade, Terrakion, Infernape, Heracross, and Shell. Getting that vital chip damage is really necessary just to ensure you can just ensure like certain Okos. So yeah. Then you have Dragon type Pokemon like Charix, Kyurem, Latias, Mo, and Axorus, who just appreciate Nidoqueen in general. Same reasons, having hazard options, like hazard options and hazard support. It's really nice at times. So yeah. In terms of other partners, you want to have steel types. Mostly steel types that really synergize well with Nidoqueen. Let's say like Celesteela, Skarmory, Bronzong. They have the immunity to ground and could just take on opposing what is it? Ice type Pokemon very nicely. While they just have hazards of their own, or even some form of recovery with Celesteela in mind. So they all like have very good defensive synergy with Nidoqueen, since Nidoqueen can just handle any of these threats. Let's say like Celesteela, and Skarmory. They usually fear electric types, and Nidoqueen could just wall most electric types, or toxic them in general. And then mons like Bronzong and Metagross really appreciate Nidoqueen, since they actually kind of synergize very well together, offensively and defensively, so, except for having that ground weakness. So Bronzong has that levitate, so yeah. Well, they can interchange between having rocks, and the other could have T-spikes. And, yeah. While, like, Metagross and Bronzong can actually take on a Psychic type Pokemon as well, so yeah. Bisharp, while doesn't really have good defensive synergy, can deal with Psychic type Pokemon and switch into Defiant to defog in case in which Nidoqueen could just set up hazards then defog. And if the opponent wants defog, then you can switch into Bisharp, so yeah. Then you have offensive and defensive pivots, which have access to U-turn or just bulky in general. Or Volt's turn, it's just or Party Shot or Baton Pass like Zapdos, Scizor, Tornadus, Celebi, and Vikavolt. They usually have some form of like option to switch in to Nidoqueen, since Nidoqueen might need something or a way to get into a certain matchup. So yeah. For offensive pivots, these are mostly Pokemon that have very high offensive capabilities, like have a high special attack, or they could just force out switches, and they could just, you know, full turn whenever they want to, so yeah. Defensive pivots are usually Pokemon that are like, mostly, they'll have like a good way to like switch. They have like enough bulk to switch in, like have a slow, like, full turn, which will guarantee Nidoqueen will get in on the state these Pokemon faint from either like respective super effective hits, so yeah. And they also have some access to hazard options, so it alleviates Nidoqueen's hazard roll, so yeah. And sometimes you might see regen Pokemon, since they can take hits for Nidoqueen while like you just recover off the damage in general, so yeah. Then lastly, you want to have setup sweepers, wall breakers, and revenge cleaners or killers, since they appreciate Nidoqueen's ability to 1. Absorb toxic spikes, 2. Set up with rocks or toxic spikes, and 3. Of course, deal enough chip damage to where these Pokemon could just come in at any point in the game, set up, and just wait in general. Like, setup supers really appreciate this, as well as wall breakers, since they just it makes their job a lot easier. They just have to clean, and it also similarly, like, revenge killers or cleaners just they have an easier time just once the opponent is like weakened, or they just have to deal with toxic spike damage in general. So yeah. For checks and counters, there's like a plethora of options in which Nidoqueen can be checked hard. Like, you have water type Pokemon in general, like that hard counter Nidoqueen at times. So you have to be advised that Nidoqueen does have access to Thunderbolt. So these guys can't really switch in for free unless you know that you could take the hit. So generally speaking, water and ground type Pokemon are really good, since Nidoqueen's forced to run, let's say, Hidden Power Grass or like Life Orb, or the Modest, just to be able to hit these Pokemon for damage. Or you could just run these mons like especially defensive in general. So yeah, Keldeo and Starmie like outspeed Nidoqueen and even Keldeo has the option to set up if it wants to. So yeah, has access to taunt, so prevents any hazard stacking. Starmie has Rapid Spin. Araquanid, though it has to fear any rocks, switching into rocks, and also Thunderbolt, you can just deal with Nidoqueen EODs. Then with Swampert, you can set up rocks, you could have Earthquake, Water coverage. Loki, with the Assault Vest, can take hits for days for Nidoqueen, though you have to be advised that if it poisons it, then it could just be ward down. Psychic type Pokemon usually have Taunt. With these mons usually have access to Taunt, Calm Mind, and of course their respective Psychic coverage, just to bypass Nidoqueen and just deal with it in general. Like Mega Alakazam is a good example. He has a very high speed depth stat, access to Calm Mind, access to Taunt, even Encore if Nidoqueen locks itself into the wrong move. So yeah, Azelf does really well since it has access to Taunt and just has Psychic in general. The Crozma is really and the Millow are really bulky, and you can just set up with Calm Minds on their saves. And Nidoqueen can't do much about it except for going for a Toxic, but that means Nidoqueen will risk being OHKO'd or taking a huge amount of damage. So yeah, same with Bisharna. So then you have ground type Pokemon. Most of these can be built with Yachi Berry in mind, or they just have like they're just reran like especially defensive in general. So and then some of these Pokemon outspeed Nidoqueen, like say Sideguard, Landorus, Crocodile. They just outspeed, just hit it with Earthquake or even Z Earthquake if it wants to. Then you have Pokemon like say Seismitoad, like I said, Seismitoad, Swampert, even Gastrodon just do work against Nidoqueen in general. Kalo can just get in and just pressure Nidoqueen out, so yeah. With the Earthquake, though it can't really do much against Nidoqueen in terms of coverage. Aside those two, so like just set up rocks or just go for Earthquake. So then you have Ice type Pokemon, which really pressure Nidoqueen, like Kyurem Black, Weavile, Mamoswine, Crocodile, even mons like Jinx and Kyurem, regular Kyurem. Like these Pokemon have very good amounts of special defense, or can be built very bulky and can just tank most of Nidoqueen's hits, while retaliate back with their respective ice coverage. So yeah. Then you have special walls, like let's say Mega Latias. You could also put the Latias in this category. Mostly Latias, Mega Latias and Latias. Because they have a really high special bulk. Blissey, Chansey, Mega Sableye, Porygon 2, and even Milotic. They're really good switch-ins for Nidoqueen, as they have to run the respective coverage, or Nidoqueen has to run like Taunt in general, but Sableye could just, set up on its face with Calm Minds, or just do whatever it wants. So, then you have mons like defensive pivots like Venusaur, Slowbro, Umbreon, Uxie, and Vaporeon. They eat most of Nidoqueen's hits, and can pivot out into certain check or counter of the above their check and counters, since they can take the hit and they have a large amount of HP or defense stats to do so. Venusaur is a really nice one, since Venusaur, I just mentioned it, just while it doesn't have any pivot options, it can just recover off most of its HP against Nidoqueen, and can just get Seeds, Vanitas, and Gigadrino, so yeah. Then you have Calm Mind users in general, like let's say Suicune, Reuniclus, Jirachi, Spiritomb, and Cofagrigus. So there are other Calm Mind users that are like Psychic types, like those on the right side, or the others below. But usually Calm Mind just like is a really good way to beat Nidoqueen in general, because Nidoqueen doesn't have the bulk nor the firepower to risk a CM war, or attempting to win a CM war in general. So yeah, and it's almost impossible for it to like do so. So they are usually forced out to the right counters, otherwise they're pretty much set up fodder. Then you have Levitate Pokemon like Latios, Cresselia, Bronzong, Mesprit, and Lursum. They pressure Nidoqueen very well. They have Earthquake immunity, and they just have the right amount of coverage options to beat Nidoqueen 1v1. There's a lot of Psychic type Pokemon that have Levitate. Some others that but this is mostly for Pokemon that just have like the ability just to like switch into ground moves for free. So yeah, Bronzong's case, it actually switches into stabs very nicely. So yeah. Then you have Center Sweepers like even Calm Mind, Manaphy, Tailwind Manaphy, Quiver Dance, Volcarona, Curslax, even Mega Gyarados is high special defense, and even Gallade just can force out Nidoqueen and just set up in general on his face. So yeah. Then you have wall breakers like Azumarill, Victini, Axorus, Kyurem, and Koopa U that all pressure Nidoqueen in general with their powerful stab or options with their respective choice item, let's say choice band or choice specs. They're able to beat Nidoqueen down. So yeah. Then lastly, there are other past threats in general. Since Nidoqueen does have a very slow 76 base stat, any of these Pokemon down below can actually deal with Nidoqueen or check it offensively. So Garchomp, while it doesn't want to switch into an Ice Beam, can gladly just switch in and just go for the Earthquake. Same with Drill for if it has to switch into any Earth Power or Ice Beam in general. So then Alakazam with Focus Sash can just revenge kill Nidoqueen with ease. Mega Metacham also pressures Nidoqueen with priority and Psychic Stab. Mew in general is a hard counter to Nidoqueen, as it has knockoff to remove the item, taunt, even Calm Mind if it wants to set up on its face. So yeah. Gardevoir, while it has to be avoid very many poison moves, it can just be able to beat it 1v1. So yeah, Nidoqueen in a 1v1 from an offensive standpoint, unless Nidoqueen just Scarf. So yeah, then we're low on Ninetales with Scarf Blizzard, or with offensive, especially if it's an offensive. Like for Alligator has access to Sheer Force Liquidation, which hits really hard. So yeah, you gotta be careful with that. Then you have Celebi. While it doesn't want to appreciate switching into any of its moves for Earth Power, it has really good coverage just with Psychic, just to hit Nidoqueen hard. And lastly, Digger Speed just outspeeds Nidoqueen by 1 point and just hits it off in an Earthquake. So yeah. So overall, like Nidoqueen's offensive coverage, support options, as well as its great typing ability, just makes one of the better draft picks from both an offensive and defensive standpoint. As you can see, the fact that you can pressure so many Pokemon at once while still having support and defensive value is just amazing. Being able to check, let's say, the ground, electric types, fairy type Pokemon, have access to stealth rocks, toxic spikes is just amazing in general. So yeah, because of that, it's very difficult to switch into due to its like near perfect coverage. Has a variety of sets to run and can just fulfill multiple roles for a team. And it works even better if you have like Pokemon that complement it very well, since it could just ease its like Nidoqueen into running more either offensive or even defensive roles if it wants to. So yeah, mostly offensive if you need to like run some sets. So the problem with Nidoqueen is that it's very slow, and its overall weakness to ground, ice, water, and psychic just make it very susceptible to its since those are very common offensive typings now in the draft league. Especially like the fact that you could have like once you properly scout out Nidoqueen, you know what it is gonna do. So yeah, and Sheer Force gives Nidoqueen. What I will mention is that Sheer Force is an amazing ability to pair with Nidoqueen, since like you just become a threatening wall breaker and just like have just enough firepower just to hit or kill a certain or to kill a certain target. So yeah, overall I do think it's a great Pokemon. Has a good amount of traits, and it does have some balls, but overall it's a great Pokemon in general. So I do recommend having a Nidoqueen in any team, especially if it's a ground type. So yeah, a ground and poison type Pokemon is very undervalued. So yeah, so that's all I'm gonna say for Nidoqueen for this week. So I'll be covering one more Pokemon before we discuss for the series, before we go on to our Mega Evolution discussion, which will be a very good surprise. So yeah, hopefully. So like I do want to hear like any suggestions you guys want to ask, and I'll try to cover like as many Pokemon as I can over the next few weeks, even throughout like the next like year. So yeah, so especially for VGC and Draft League. So so that's all I have for today. So see ya guys, and take care.